Welcome, everyone, to today's Silicon Valley Forum Fireside Chat titled Modernizing and Innovative HR Operations. And our guest today is Gary Goldstein, the CEO in Insynctive Incorporated. Before we get into the conversation with Gary, we do have a few announcements. What is Silicon Valley Forum? We are a California-based 501c3 nonprofit organization. Our mission is to foster innovation, entrepreneurship, and leadership in Silicon Valley and throughout the world. We achieve our mission through events, programs, and conferences, whereas the Silicon Valley Forum functions as a center of knowledge and connections. We cover everything from the latest tech trends to the startup and investment ecosystem, and our activities are aimed to educate, train, inspire, and connect technologists, entrepreneurs, corporates, and investors. We're going to take, I think, the summer off from the fireside chats. We might have one or two to be scheduled, but our events coming up in the fall, we've got the California Coastal Cleanup Day, which will be in Santa Clara County for those of you who live locally. And then on December 11th, we're going to be hosting our State of the Global Tech Sector Luncheon somewhere in Silicon Valley. And so those are a couple of our events coming up. The lawyer likes us to read this disclaimer. We always got to keep the lawyers happy. The Silicon Valley Forum, a California Public Benefit Corporation, or SVF, does not endorse or sponsor any commercial product, service, or activity. SVF's production of this event does not constitute endorsement by SVF or its representatives. All SVF programs and services are extended to the public on a non-discriminatory basis. We are a nonprofit 501c3 organization where we do rely on the public support, and we thank you for that support. And we've got the following corporate sponsors to acknowledge for their support of the Silicon Valley Forum Fireside Chat series. Blocks, Forensic Financial Services, Global Tactics, and not listed as Lyman Communications. So we will end this session here. And as soon as I can figure out, still trying to figure out all these, just when you figure out the figuring out the intricacies of all the platforms, they change it on you. So, Gary, can you confirm that the PowerPoint is no longer showing?
PowerPoint is no longer showing, correct.
All right, just our pretty faces. Very good.
And some guests.
And some guests, absolutely. Well, Gary, thank you for joining us today. And the first question, and you and I have known each other for a few years. You've been working on Insynctive, and so we've gotten to know each other. I've seen your investment pitches, but you and I have had a number of side conversations, and I thought it would be very interesting to have you as a guest because, as we both discussed, HR is not interesting, and it's kind of the least innovative aspects of business. We've got CRMs for sales, we've got QuickBooks and those type of things for finances, but HR seems to have kind of stagnated over the years. And I know you're doing more than that, but so the first question is, and it goes to all our guests, is what's the problem you're solving? Who are you solving it for? And how are you solving the problem? So take a few minutes to address those. Over to you.
Well, hey, Aaron, thanks for inviting me to participate in this wonderful fireside chat. I appreciate it. And yes, I value our relationship, and it's great to have known you for all these years. So there's a number of things that are problematic with mid-market corporations, associations, and aggregated groups. It's all about paper and data. So I'll give you some examples as we continue to go through the conversation, but it's if you have multiple points of data entry, that creates bad data creates unhappy employees, and that creates turnover. So if you look at Rippling, who's raised $2 billion, Gusto, $750 million, and you got your publicly traded companies like ADP, Paychex, Paycor, Paycom. They want everybody, they force a change of payroll and then have everybody use the rest of their vertical stack of solutions. But guess what? They don't do everything great. And that's where Insynctive comes in. We're a gap filler.
And then how are you filling that gap? Kind of work the details and then, yeah, do give us kind of an example, kind of a case study.
Okay, so Insynctive is a configurable platform that automates HR, benefits administration, and companies really come to us for benefits administration as well as process and document automation, workflows, electronic signatures, and that helps us access, gives us different access points to the marketplace, not forcing a change of payroll, but integrating to it. So I'll give you an example of an integration that we did with ADP Workforce Now, which is their mid-market product for a company out of Southern California with 1,700 employees, 5 different divisions, 33 different locations. And so that integration with ADP Workforce Now is a bi-directional real-time integration. And so we're part of the ADP marketplace, which is ADP's recognition that businesses want to buy best-of-breed solutions, but now want them on an integrated basis. One point of data entry, everybody's on the same data page. So as the employee validated database of record, Insynctive gets that data from a payroll system or a third-party system or a spreadsheet, and we have the employees validate that data about themselves and their dependents. And that then can pre-populate all the different forms that we internalize. And we can present these forms in a way that looks familiar for the pre-hire process, the onboarding process. This group out of Southern California, they wanted an employee status change process, post onboarding all the way through termination. So imagine that one of the managers of the 33 locations, a supervisor, a key executive, somebody in HR or HRS wants to make a change in employee status. It starts with a request that goes through Insynctive. So they log into the system, they make the request, and then that request goes to HR. HR starts a checklist, which is a series of people who have to have eyes on that status change. And then they sign off on a form that's pre-populated by the system. And once that form is completed and everybody signed off, then that data flows back to ADP Workforce Now. And if it's a job change, then that changes the job code and a workers' comp code, and then that data flows back to Insynctive to keep all data in sync, which is where we're growing into our name. So what's cool is I showed it to a top HR tech person, and it blew his mind. So he's bringing us into a hospital that's affiliated with a university, well known. And they have the university brought in Workday for their 50,000 employees. And then they're using ServiceNow for other functionality. But guess what? The two systems don't talk to each other. So they want us to be that gap filler for data. Well, that'll put us on the map. So there's 200,000 other companies that use ADP Workforce Now that can use the same functionality that we built for the group out of Southern California. So that's all configurable to the unique needs of every employer group. And as a matter of fact, we just picked up another 400-person group out of Florida that you think of Dave and Buster's. They're already at 6 locations, 400 employees, part-time and full-time. And so, we're off and running.
So how is the clients measuring success? Is it about eliminating friction? Is it, part of that is increasing productivity. What's the value proposition?
Well, so it's the value proposition is tremendous to them because they're in paper. Can you imagine, making a status change for 1,000 employees, 500 employees a year? These changes are, I want to change their title. I want to change their pay. I want to change their job. I want to move them from full-time to part-time, part-time to full-time. I want to change their location. All that is done through the solution that we built for them. The other piece was pretty fun. They have 420 of the 1,700 employees are drivers, and they were managing drivers' insurance and license expiration dates, certifications, renewals by spreadsheet and paper. So we put together a quick checklist for them. They log in through my Microsoft Active Directory. For those people who don't have access to that, then they log in through a different access point. They see the first task, which is take a picture of your driver's license, upload it to the system. Take a picture of your insurance card, upload it to the system. The third task is an attestation form. This stuff is really mine, because what they were finding is employees were turning in documentation that wasn't theirs or expired. So the attestation form, they sign that electronically, and then they put in 2 slots, the driver's license and insurance expiration dates. And that goes into the database, and that drives future reminders, automated reminders to the employees, 60 days out, 30 days out, 2 weeks out, 3 days out, oops, you've lost your job. And then there's a whole administrative side in a report that we built for them that was customized, and it enabled them to actually help pass an audit for the first time. So a real fun client. They want more process and document automation, both in HR and outside of HR.
So what I'll call the digitalization of HR, and so there's still a lot of companies that are not even digitalizing their document depository, right? They're still using some either on old-fashioned hard drives, or some of them have servers, but it's not really centralized. Why do you think there's an assumption in this question, but why is it that HR particularly is still very much paper driven by some of the biggest corporations?
Yeah, that's why, I mean, the mid-market companies, to enterprise companies, they have pain because of this paper involvement. They have capital, and they're now willing to finally, after years and years of years, they're actually willing to invest in companies like Insynctive to help them improve what they're doing every day, and improve what they're doing for their employees every day. Because turnover today is so costly, right? And so this is the final piece of an enterprise or a corporation that is being automated finally. So we're in the right place at the right time. And we've got the reason we're here today, Aaron, is because of our team in North Macedonia. My hat's off to them. I tip my cap to our huge team of 9 people. And then we hit positive cash flow at the end of 23, and kept increasing cash flow. And I was able to hire a gal that used to work for me before. She's here in the Central Valley. She has 20 years of implementation and customer success experience. So between the team in North Macedonia and her, we now have really room to do some great stuff for our client companies, whether they be service providers, end user client companies. And we have a big block of association business because of a turnkey e-commerce like solution we have for benefits administration for associations, where the broker can actually help the member set themselves up with their own account. We call it self-registration. They can put in information about themselves and their dependents. They can go to step 2, where they get to choose from a benefit package from our library of carriers, plans, and rates that we can quickly attribute to a specific client account. Step 3, they put in their ACH and credit card. Step 4, all the paperwork's all done for them, except for we pre-populate form fields in 3 different ways. One is read-only. Other one is highlighted in green, where they need to pay attention to. And it's some of the fields are pre-populated depending on what information we've collected up front. And then of course there's red fields or mandatory fields. You think of beneficiary information or evidence of insurability type stuff. And in some states, if you don't have a beneficiary written down on your document or your application, then the state gets the benefit if you die. So we make that a mandatory field to make sure that the proper people who deserve it get the actual money. And of course, on the first of every month, the members get charged for the benefits that they bought, and it makes my favorite sound. Cha-ching.
Cha-ching, yes. Cash rolling in.
Well, that's what I keep telling my son. He hasn't quite figured it out yet, but monthly recurring revenues.
Right. That's that's a wonderful metric. We've talked about this in the past. There's been a number of HR attempts to digitalize HR. Let's put it that way. And you mentioned timing, so it's the right time. But why do you think, as the digitalization of other aspects of a business operations has accelerated over the last 10, 15, even 20 years, that HR hasn't, and not so much from the client perspective, but it's really from the vendor, from companies like yours. Why is it that these companies have not been that successful over time?
Well, I think in part, HR has always been that child you didn't want to acknowledge, and but now they're really important, and the technology is advancing so fast that it's making a real difference in the corporate life, and reducing costs and improving morale. I've been in this business almost 40 years. It's scary to say that. First as a benefit broker, and then created one of the first online benefits administration platforms back in the late 90s. Our first client was a PEO that became the fastest growing company in the country one year, top 50 2 other years. And then they sold to TriNet at about 300 million in revenue. The second client, and you remember 1999 dial-up modem days? It was a dynamic time. We had no idea what the internet was going to do for us or to us. And today, as I mentioned, my teams have a world away. So the second client was about 150 employees by the time they came on the system. It was a little company called eBay, and they stayed with us till they were over 6,000 employees domestically. And then because we got eBay, we got E-Trade, Sony PlayStation, Dryers Ice Cream, and so many companies that don't exist today because of the dot-com bust, which taught me that I have to drive companies to positive cash flow and then profitability, which is what we're doing with Insynctive. So having that experience, I met the gal Janice, who I hired last July. She was the only benefits person until they had too many benefits people at eBay, and she called me up. There were about 3,000 employees at that point. She says, "Gary, I'm out of here. If you need an implementation customer success person," I'm like, "Heck yeah, come on over." So I hired her immediately, and we sold BizNet to a company on its way to an IPO. Unfortunately, they missed their IPO, and we got to resell it again. Janice went with that company, and so we've been teasing each other for about 8 years. "Hey, Janice, I'm going to hire you. Gary, when are you going to hire me?" And so I did. And she just brings so much experience and so much talent to the team. It's a really exciting time where we're at with Insynctive.
I've done business with companies and people in Bulgaria and Romania, and maybe even more obscure countries, Moldova. But not often people say North Macedonia. So how did you get connected with North Macedonia?
Well, it's kind of a long story, but the short story is that the original founder of Insynctive, by the time I met him, he was completely burned out. He had just graduated from MIT and Stanford Business School. I met him at StartX, and he had a good concept of what he wanted to do, but it was all marketplace driven. And if you don't have eyeballs, then you can't have a marketplace because nobody's going to join the marketplace. So I created a different business model, and he didn't like that. And so by 2016, he was completely burned out. He was a startup. He was a turnaround guy, and he was already working at a completely different company. And so I made him an offer he was happy to accept. And so that was 9 years ago, last month. And so I had to pare down the team that he had, reduce the burn. I chose Martin as our CTO in North Macedonia. He was 25 at the time, and that's all he knows was SaaS. His whole life was all about SaaS and all modern languages and everything. So we knew we'd have to completely redo the software and refocus the company to what we're doing successfully today, which is stay focused on the 4 different product lines, what we do best, and integrate to the over 40 different categories of best of breed solutions. And we're just starting down that path.
I've got
So,
more questions
because we're
about
Gary backed, we've had to grow very specifically and on purpose, and with an eye on differentiation.
that's an excellent point. I've got a couple more questions on kind of the sector, but want to go into the personal side of you and what led to this. Where were you born? Where did you grow up?
I was born in St. Louis and grew up. Pretty much grew up there. Grew up in Los Angeles, and then my dad moved up here to be a doctor at UCSF and Moffitt. He was a high risk pregnancy doctor, so we had to move with him. And then I went to Cal, as you can see, and traveled the country for a fraternity I helped start a chapter of at Cal, and did that for 2 years, and then came back here and started working for my mom, who was in the plant rental business. She had 2 acres of plants, indoor house plants. You think of all the plants and restaurants and buildings and private homes. That's what she did. So I helped her start the sales end of that, and that was very successful. But sometimes families, family businesses, some people have to leave, and I left happily to go into the financial services business. I ended up being the fastest growing agency in the East Bay, according to San Francisco Business Times. And so I got into the insurance business, selling securities, mostly retirement plans. And then when the internet came along, I was like, wow, this stuff is, I was tired of pushing paper. And that's how I got into the online benefits administration business.
So what did you study at Cal?
Math.
Studied math. And so obviously the analytical skills has helped you throughout your career. And but what do you find? I tell people that no matter what their major is, they got to learn to sell. You have to sell. And I just attended an event this past Monday night of where I met a young woman who just got her computer science degree from George Mason University, and she lives out here in Silicon Valley in San Jose, and she was talking about how difficult it is to find a job. And I said, well, you got to sell it. And I said, let's do a mock interview. And she kind of went through the routine. I said, no, you've got to sell your resume. You're always selling something. So I would like to get your thoughts on that. What is it? You've got a person of experience. You come across, younger people. What is it that you think are important skills for them to have, and where does sales fit into that?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. I work with young, very smart people at Cal, the fraternity I helped start a chapter of. I'm the president of the House Corporation there. And so they're actually running a business that does about $650,000 a year in revenue. And so I impress upon them that asking brothers for money is a good thing. It's not a bad thing, because they have to keep up. And we put safeguards around it to make sure that they're, paying their dues, paying their rent, and et cetera, so that the money flows through to the house corporation. And so it's all about communication for me, to be able to help them communicate with others. They're really, really smart people, but I think, to the sales part, if you can communicate really well, your idea and what you're selling, what you have, and make it an offer, I think that's a little different than hard selling, right? It's more soft selling.
Right.
Make it a benefit to the people.
Benefit people, again, the value, and then the essential element of communication. And so you've been part of successful companies, but you don't have to name names, but I'm sure you're not batting 1,000, as they say.
No, no.
So, and certainly I haven't, and I enjoy telling more about my failures in business than the successes, although I'm blessed with my successes. But with your companies or ventures you've been part of that either been, and failure is defined as either financial complete failure with insolvency, or failure that's underperforming. You start a business or you get involved in a business and it may be profitable or close to profitability, but it doesn't quite produce the return on investment that you thought it would. So however you want to define that, but what are some of the lessons that you've learned in being a part of some ventures that have failed or underperformed?
Well, there's a couple thoughts on that. So with BizNet, my first benefits online benefits administration company that we sold to a company on its way to an IPO, I was like all jazzed. We're on our way to an IPO. The company had raised $750 million, and sky's the limit, right? Then we couldn't pass. That company couldn't pass an audit, so they had to sell off all their assets that they had bought over the years. And basically they died because of all the debt they took on. And so that left a hole in me. And that's why I'm here with Insynctive, is because I want to do something differently than that outcome. I've got others, so I went to business coaching after that and did a whole bunch of startups, high tech, low tech, and no tech companies up in Reno. Back then, you could shoot a cannon through a lot of the buildings and not hit a thing. But I took on and worked with several businesses. I invested in several businesses, a low tech, a bunch of different fun little companies that failed because the owners weren't committed. And so when I knew that when I got involved with Insynctive and I saw the picture and the focus that I could bring to it, if I'm in the driver's seat and I'm putting my money into it, that's where I want to be. So I'm doing my best work ever. I'm just so proud of our team.
Yeah, the importance of the team. I mean, that can never be underestimated and undervalued. So that's definitely true. Going back to the sector you're operating in, what does those infamous two letters AI mean to your business or to your sector?
Oh, it's tremendous, right? I mean, so I'll give you an example of a agentic AI solution. So a good friend of mine sold his insurance agency to NFP, which is now part of Aon. And so he did his 2-year stint, and he's retired. He's out playing golf every day. He's a young man and got a wonderful family. But he was keeping in touch with, his former clients and his I think 8 insurance agents that worked at that agency. This guy's out of Austin, Texas. So one of his clients calls him up one day and says, "I'm leaving you." He's like, "What? You're one of our best clients." And he said that the client told him that they couldn't get a certificate of insurance in time for an opportunity that they needed, and there's other things that they needed for this new account. And so he was commiserating with a friend of his who is familiar with AI, and so they put together this agent to answer the phones, to be able to get certificates out, and take care of all the back office stuff for his insurance agent. And now that's his new business in partnership with his friend. And so they're using these agentic AI agents, bots, and they admit right up front that they are bots. And so they went to this one conference in Louisiana, I think it was, and out of 16 agencies that were there, 14 of them signed up for trials. So we're looking into, Amazon Web Services wants to help us look into Gen AI, and we're looking into agentic AI. We've met with, his partner several times to see where it would fit in with Insynctive. So we've got some good ideas about how to help us pre-populate the form fields and deliver the forms and whatnot. So yeah, it'll change. It's going to change everything.
It will change everything. Absolutely. Do you foresee how the best to ask this question? Um, AI seems to be kind of eliminating the workforce and the numbers with automation on various fields. Where do you see that disruption? Will AI also disrupt the HR field in that way, where you'll see more automation and less people that's required to handle the roles and responsibilities of HR within a firm?
The rules and regulations, yes. But I think the people, I think I always look at technology as a people enhancer, right? And a people enabler. And so I think that's the positioning that I'm going to be taking with AI and Insynctive, is to look at the how can we automate the I mean, is compliance getting easier anytime soon? No.
Oh.
So take care of the ugly part of our business electronically, be able to facilitate the employees effectively, and have a better experience for that enterprise and or association and their members or aggregated groups of companies or individuals.
For our guests tuning in, I did enable the microphone and the camera, so if there's questions, do want to open this up. But Gary, let me ask you this: what is your vision 5+ years down the road for your company? What if we're having this conversation in 2030, 2031, hopefully everyone's well, but where do you see your company being?
Well, we're going to grow through acquisition as well as organically. Um, I've already have private equity groups. I have potential strategic partners that are talking to us as we grow, and so that's kind of how we've got an exit plan. It's just we've got a number of different options, so it's good. So I think in 5 years we'll have a nice exit and fulfill my dream.
Are you currently raising capital now?
Um, as you know, I've been raising capital for a while unsuccessfully, but now we've gotten to a point where we're growing revenues. We did 313,000 2 years ago. Last year we did 445,000. This year we're looking at 700,000 to a million. And then once we hit that million mark, and obviously we want to drive our company back to positive cash flow and then profitability. If we take on investment, then that drives into marketing and hiring salespeople who are experienced salespeople, so they're not going to come inexpensively, much like Janice does with 20 years of implementation customer success. So then we have to work our way back to and drive ourselves through sales, through revenue, through implementations, back to positive cash flow and break even. So my projections right now is in 3 years we'll do 16 million, and then we'll be driving towards 50.
So tell us more about your marketing strategy.
So we have a group out of Atlanta that is helping us do our LinkedIn thought leadership. So everything you see about Insynctive and Gary on LinkedIn is done in conjunction with them. Janice is also helping with that as well. And then we just started a campaign to 5,000 opt-in ADP Workforce Now users that have the same gap as the group out of LA and the group out of Florida. So we found a niche and we're going to exploit it. And then what we're going to do is go after associations that have provide benefits to their employees, because that's makes my favorite sound and it makes me feel good, because monthly recurring revenues tends to go up. Yeah. So those are the two angles that we're going to, then as we grow, we've got people in the background. One guy who I worked with at the company I sold BizNet to, we created something called a carrier exchange solution for a little company started with about 60 employees when we were there. It was called Workday. And so we were under contract with Workday to do take all the enrollment and eligibility data, pass it through the cloud via APIs to all the third-party vendors. Unfortunately, the company I sold BizNet to did not make their IPO and told Dave Duffield that we're no longer going to support this. And Dave leans across the table and he says, I got a hell of a lot of money, and I want you to give me everything I need for this carrier exchange solution and everybody I need. So this guy Dominic went over to Workday as employee number 200. They were growing really rapidly at that point, and he went through a couple of acquisitions with Workday, and he went through an IPO with them, and went over to Viva Systems and went through an IPO with them. And so he's out consulting right now and waiting for me to hire him as our chief of the integration side of our connection side of our business. And then we've got another guy who will be our COO, who helped grow the PEO from 0 to 300 million in revenue. So a lot of people in the wings waiting to come work for Insynctive, just like Janice waited 8 years, right?
Right. No, I understand that. Um, most businesses fail, right? Very few are successful, and so kind of going back to a previous question, but I want to reframe it in this way. What are some of the top 2 or 3 risk factors that you pay most attention to? Obviously, capital risk, right? And that's true. Even Fortune 100 companies, some of them are dealing with some capital risk, and having enough cash in the bank to turn around their strategy. And I'm thinking Apple right now. But in your business, what are some of the top 2 or 3 risk factors that's kind of keeping you up at night?
Well, certainly always cash flow is number one. So I'm the guy who does the accounts receivable and accounts payable. So I do the billing. It's my favorite day of the month, every month, when I bill on the first. And then the second thing is really kind of listening to our clients' needs. And that'll how we allow us to stay focused on what we do best, continue to expand on that based on what our clients are looking for and willing to pay for. And so that gives us the ability as an agile shop to continue to evolve as a company, as an organization, and keep our eye on the ball.
And taking that a little bit further, what's some of the common issues that your customers are encountering um, in digitalizing their HR? What is it that, because as we know, a corporate structure is lots of moving pieces. So when you're trying to put in kind of what I call digitalizing the HR, what are some of the issues in getting that piece of the puzzle fitting into the larger corporate ecosystem?
Well, that's where Insynctive really does come in. So, like all these 200,000 companies that use ADP Workforce now, they have several gaps that we've identified in the document and process automation sector. And that affects everybody in the corporation, whether you're at the division level or at the local level, store level, or, wherever it might be. And so that's where it gives us the opportunities to really shine, because everybody touches the system. So, and it just makes their lives so much better. It's great to see it.
Is there you mentioned ADP, so you've got a relationship with them, is that correct?
Yeah, we're part of the ADP marketplace as a partner.
Yeah, and for people like me, what does ADP marketplace mean?
It means that ADP recognizes that businesses want to buy best of breed solutions, but now want them on an integrated basis, one point of data entry, everybody on the same data page. And so one of their clients can go to the marketplace. They have a little button on the dashboard that says marketplace. They touch the button and up pops and all these 300 different companies that do different things, and they can supplement and complement ADP Workforce Now through whatever their needs are.
And is it
And
do
it
they
helps
know?
them keep their payroll, right? That's the main thing, is to keep their payroll.
And does it have your company name on that, or are you white labeling this for ADP?
We haven't started white labeling it for the ADP. We do it for other service providers. We brand it to them and then brand it to their clients, so everybody accesses the system that looks familiar to them. ADP is a little different in their thought process that way, but yeah. But the good news is this bi-directional real-time API with ADP Workforce Now provides us a framework to work with other ADP platforms, as well as other payroll platforms and third-party systems as well. But seeing the data flow back and forth in real time is really pretty cool to an old guy like me.
I bet. Um, I don't want to name the give the name of the company in case there's any NDAs, but you have mentioned a company you worked with in Orange County, which
Mhm.
I think was is interesting. Are you at liberty to kind of talk about that a little bit and how you've worked with that company?
Yeah, so it's Goodwill of Orange County. So they
Yes.
have 180 sister companies, obviously out of Orange County. They're a very conservative organization. What's cool is we were brought in by the CIO, and then he brought in HR and HRIS groups, and they're under so much pressure. Being the size that they are, 1,700 employees, 5 different divisions, 33 different locations, and they're basically all on paper. The only thing that was all, like online was ADP Workforce Now and their Ben admins. They use their Ben admin systems as well as the payroll system, but the rest of it is all paper, and we fill that gap. Every time we meet with them, they want more process and document automation and management. And the next thing they're going to help us with is building out a leave of absence solution that the big guys don't have. So imagine here in California, you can have 3, 4, or 5 different leave of absence running concurrently at once, and they're managing that by spreadsheet and paper, which is really dangerous because there's real money associated with a wrongful leave of absence. Somebody gets hurt, whatever it might be, one way or the other. And so they just as a side note, they have like 100 some odd leave of absence running concurrently right now.
And Goodwill operates, you say Orange County, so they kind of operate independently, and that's how Goodwill, Silicon Valley, Denver, they all operate or independent organizations.
That's correct. There's 180 sister companies across the United States that can use the driver solution that we put together for them. There and all kinds of trucking, smaller, um, end type trucking companies that have drivers that don't use the transportation management platforms. I haven't done enough research to understand what they actually do in terms of collecting driver's license, insurance, expirations, certifications, and renewals. But they say they have it. So I asked an Uber driver. I said, how did you, get onboarded?" And so they did collect that on at Uber. So some people are figuring it out, some people haven't.
So how do you, it seems like you're making what I call informed decisions about your company and I get a sense you spend a lot of time kind of just keeping on top of how the sector is operating, both the HR sector as well as the tech sector. Can you kind of share some of that story on how do you manage staying on top of the latest trends?
Well, I talk to a lot of people. I go to conferences as well, and really kind of just watch and see what's going on. There's a bunch of different SHRM conference. There's HR Tech conference. There's Transform for HR people. There's another one called ITC Vegas, Las Vegas, and then there's another one SaaS Stock and SaaS Stir. So I go to a few of those. I don't go all of them because I got to spend most time paying attention to the nuts and bolts.
That might be obvious to you and me and a few others, but I particularly again younger people. I'm surprised on how many startups and small companies, young companies that come around where they just don't understand the market they're operating in. They're focused on the solution, and I've always said, well, how do you create value of something that people that a customer is willing to pay for?
Right.
And
That's the key.
yeah, that is the key. So, where do you see? Again, I don't want to ask the same question, but I want to pose it that I asked previously, but I want to pose it in a different way. Where do you see, not necessarily within AI, but the trends of management? You're kind of having to do working with managers that need to reform their operations and adapt. So where do you see are some of the opportunities and some of the challenges involved in that? Because I think there's still a lot of managers. It's that they know they need a change. I think
Right.
they're concerned about how do they do it, and of course, how do they do it, with cost efficiency.
And don't forget the internal pushback. I've always done it this way. I want to
Right.
continue to do it this way. I'm doing it correctly, but that's not cost effectively, right? That's not innovative. That's not. So I was doing a presentation to a group about 1,500 employees, and the CIO is like, "Yeah, we have to change. We have to do this stuff." And we did the presentation. Janice thought that we did a great presentation to them, and we're waiting for them to come back to us for a proposal, and they came back and said, "No thanks." So somebody inside of that group was like, "Nah, put the brakes on this." Kind of
So
weird.
that's Yeah, it is. I mean, I know through, the 30 plus years I've been in business, there's always a reminder is what's obvious to me and a few others around me is not always obvious to other people, even though it is to help the company, but it is, that we've always done it this way, and that continues to be a challenge. What does, I mean, you
But the
mentioned,
good news is that there is change that's going to be happening, and all change is always slower than you expect. But that's where Insynctive comes in, and that is what gives us the opportunity to be very successful.
the U.S. market for your company is huge, and you can certainly make a lot of money just on the U.S. market. But the digitalization of companies' operations is even more challenging in international markets outside the U.S. Is there an international strategy for Insynctive?
Yeah. So Canada would be next, and then we have our SOC 2 Type 2 that we're finalizing right now. We have our Type 1, and the next thing would be GDPR. And since our team's already over in North Macedonia, excuse me, that makes a total sense. And then the second language we would probably do, and we already have a framework for how to do multiple languages, but the next one we would do is probably Spanish, and that would help us cover most of the world
Yeah,
between English and
absolutely.
Spanish. Yeah.
English and Spanish. You mentioned GDPR, which brings me back to our home state of California. We've got the CCPA, but I'm also reminded as I've recently joined a company that has their headquarters in Utah, and I'm in California, and they've got small offices in Oregon and in British Columbia. But HR laws, while largely uniform, but each state has their intricacies. And so, how do you manage that, or does that impact? That's the question. Does each law's, HR requirements and document retention and compliance, does that largely impact your business, or is that kind of a really a non-issue that any changes between state to state is a minimal change?
It can be minimal, it can be maximal, especially as we start moving into leave of absence. So originally, my idea was to have an HR component with Insynctive. The first level would be an FAQ. The second level would be where they could call an HR person in that state who knows that compliance, who knows those rules. And the third one are the people who are really needy and need somebody on site. But I was told by investors that that's not recurring revenues. It was really good money. In the beginning, it was really good money, but we did away with that idea, and it might come back someday, depending. So having those compliance challenges out there enhances what we're doing and how we're doing it. So we're trying to get a network together of HR people all across the United States now to answer those
How much?
questions.
And when it comes to litigation, right? Then ultimately you go back to paper. How much document retention do you have to keep, and either you or your clients because of litigation and those issues?
Yeah, all the documents are always retained, even when we archive a company. We haven't lost too many clients, so don't have a duration of what happens after they archive. But as long as they're live, we've got documentation for years. We've got Our largest account is a benefit broker owned by NFP, and which is now an Aon company, and their client is the California Association of Realtors that's on our system with 44,000 employees, and we can go back all 8 years and see everybody's everything in terms of information, what they've signed up for, all the applications, change forms, waiver forms that have gone on, and what they've chosen each year.
How much does geopolitics impact your business, if at all?
Uh, that's hard to say yet.
Yeah.
We're just here in the United States minding our own business, but I would say geopolitics is going to impact all of us.
And what about macroeconomics? I mean, obviously, a recession impacts all businesses. It's,
Yeah.
unsure. There's been talk for years now about a recession,
Yeah.
the last few years, but, the numbers are still good, but there's always, always the risk what tariffs will impact and whatnot. But how does a downturn in the economy what would be the impact of a downturn in the economy on your operations or the operations of your clients?
Well, there's when the companies are growing, they have certain needs, and they're adding people, and that plays into our structure of onboarding and pre-hire onboarding and employee status changes. And then when employees are downsizing because their business is being impacted by macro or countrywide um, politics or legislation, then they're looking to downsize certainly HR, and therefore they're going to need to automate HR and other parts of their company. So that'll again enhance what we're doing.
Let me ask you just kind of a unusual question that I do like to ask people in the HR space is that the role of HR and the HR manager, are they there, in your opinion, to represent the employees, or they're there to represent management? I think a lot of people are confused about the role of HR, and now we are on the record, so if you want to defer on that question, that's quite all right. But I would like to get your thoughts.
Well, I think it's been talked about for many years about elevating HR to the C-suite, and they would still have the employees in mind as they give advice at the C-suite level. They have to. It's their job.
Right. Yeah. I mean, obviously it's kind of both, but I remember years ago being an advisor to a company where it was made very clear. It was a company of about it was a medium-sized company, about 30, 35 employees, but they had a full-time HR director, and it was made very clear that the HR director was really beholden to the upper management and to really serve as a buffer of any of the issues. But I think sometimes employees think that HR is quote unquote on their side, and it's not always that way. But
Not always.
uh, so, final thoughts, Gary, about lessons learned going forward. Anything you want to add here?
No, I think I want to thank you for inviting me to have a fireside chat with you. I think it was really exciting, and I hope your audience finds it engaging.
Appreciate this. This will go on certainly YouTube, and it'll get, once it's on YouTube, it does get significant views. So thank you, Gary. I really enjoyed the conversation. It's always good to run into you at various events, and look forward to seeing you again. And thank you to the attendees for joining us. Have a good day and a good weekend ahead.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye.